Hello, everybody. Welcome to our conversation with Harry, the introduction to the 2021 and 2022 season, the 207th season for the Handel and Haydn Society. I'm Emily Marvosh. I'm a member of the H&H Chorus, and I'm your moderator for today's session. We're calling it the conversation with Harry because he is here live and in person to answer all of your questions. It was wonderful to see many of you at the Beethoven 9 on the Esplanade in person, and it's exciting to be here together now virtually talking with Harry as we approach his ultimate season as the Handel and Haydn Society's artistic director. So some technical housekeeping for everyone. We will be recording this session for future listeners, and there are two ways to submit questions. The first way is in the chat feature, and everybody will be able to see your question there. However, if you have a private question or you want to remain anonymous, or if you have a technical question for the H&H wizards who are behind the scenes running the webinar, you can put that into the Q&A feature. That's also on the bottom of your screen. So two choices to ask questions. I'll try to get to as many questions as possible, and we'll plan on ending about 1 o'clock. So it is my pleasure now to welcome our guests. I'm joined by Harry Christophers, the Handel and Haydn Society Artistic Director, David Snead, H&H's President and CEO, Aisslinn Nosky, who is our fearless concertmaster, and Joélle Harvey, who was the soloist in the televised Messiah for Our Time last Christmas. And Joélle will be, you may recognize the top half of her face. She'll also be performing this season in April and May, including The Creation, which is the final concert on the season. She's a very good friend of the H&H family, and we're glad to have you today, Joélle. And as the website says, we are in the company of good friends, virtually right now, but soon in person. So just quickly, where is everyone calling in from? Joélle, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm in Northern Virginia, just about 30 minutes from DC.
Okay, Aisslinn?
I'm in New York City. You might hear some jackhammers throughout the hour.
Par for the course. Harry, where are you?
Yes, I'm at home in England, in Kent, just south of London, about 30 miles. It's raining outside.
Okay, lovely. And David, tell us where you're calling from, and then why don't you give the opening remarks?
I'm calling in from nearby Marblehead on the coast here. Well, first of all, I feel like, I'm joined by such great artists, Emily and Joélle, Harry and Aisslinn. It's so great to see you and share the screen with you. I feel like I'm the, which piece doesn't fit kind of guy on this panel, because you're all such fantastic artists and I just pay the bills. I also want to say hi to the audience. So great to kind of see you, connect with you. We can't wait to see you in person. We've been looking forward to this conversation with Harry for a long time, because it's an auspicious moment for H&H and for Harry and for you in the audience as he begins his final last year of 13 seasons with us. I think Harry, everyone would agree it's been a transformational period for H&H, really historic. I don't know how many concerts, maybe 60, 70, 80, maybe more, 15 CDs. The recorded legacy, I think, is phenomenal compared to the past of H&H. The uptick in recordings under your tenure has been terrific, and the legacy of that those projects will live on forever. I hope we do a box set someday, Harry, of all of your Haydn symphonies and the Mozart violin concertos with us. You've also brought H&H back to national prominence, returning us to New York City, to Tanglewood. You set us up for our return, or actually not return, our first ever performance in Carnegie Hall, the chorus, next spring, doing St. Matthew Passion with St. Luke's. So it's been quite a run. I want to just say personally, how much I have really enjoyed our relationship. I think that the way you approach your role at H&H is very collaborative in really every way, artistically as well as administratively. And you seem always to be focused on the art and the audience, which I think is kind of where we all are, but not every conductor is. I've worked with some who they feel if the notes are all played the right way, that's all they have to do. And you take a very different approach, which I find very inspiring. I remember when I came here in 2015, a lot of big orchestras were in the throes of how do they regain and reconnect with audience. There's a lot of, putting up screens and adding things on to concerts, technological, theatrical. And I came and heard H&H, Mozart Requiem you conducted, and I was just blown away. And I sat there and went, wow, here's a good idea. What if we just played the music really, really well? Like, what if that was enough? And that has been your approach. And I guess I just wanted to ask you about that, about what you want to achieve in a concert, what your goal is when you take the stage, and how well you think you've been doing at that at H&H.
Oh, thank you, David, for those very kind words. I mean, I think a lot of it, you mentioned earlier, collaboration, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I've never been one to sort of stand in front of an orchestra and dictate what I want, because that's not really my job. My job is to try to bring out the best in the performers in front of me, and to give them a sense of freedom. And I hope that certainly collaboration with Aisslinn has done that. I feed off the players just as much as they feed off me, and the same for the chorus. And you mentioned earlier about gimmicks and things. I mean, I'm very much somebody that doesn't resort to gimmicks, because I think if we can't perform the music as well enough, then we shouldn't be doing our job. So we're not doing our job. But I think much more important is the fact that it's allowing the players to express themselves, but also making sure that the audience is involved in that, and that they realise that there's a humanity coming from the stage, and they feel very much part of that. So, be it, a Haydn symphony or a big Handel oratorio or the Bach Matthew Passion, there has to be this incredible involvement. And I really do sincerely feel that when I conduct on symphony hall stage. I feel the audience, I feel their presence behind me, and that sort of reflects on the way maybe I will perform that particular concert. Because I think at H&H, what we want to do is we never want to do the same thing twice. So we need to always constantly be alive.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because there is this sense of freshness and spontaneity, I think, in your performances. And that's hard to do, actually, be just in the moment like that. It might surprise people to hear that performances change night to night. Is that intentional on your purpose, or does it just sort of happen spontaneously?
It sort of happens, but I mean, I think from when I first came, I mean, I stopped people writing so much into their copies, because I said, if you write that down, I may not do it the next time, and you don't want to be regimented. And Baroque music particularly is about freedom of expression. I mean, Aisslinn knows that perfectly, and when Aislinn's playing, I can share to it. It's going to be different every night. We need that feeling of spontaneity, of new ideas coming through constantly, and that can change from, if we're doing a work with soloists. I mean, we've got Joélle here. I may have an idea of how I want that aria to be sung, but when a singer comes in and does it, then actually I might change it. I might change the tempo to suit that particular person. That soloist might have different ideas for me, and we'll collaborate, and we'll work out what's best for the performance in general. And I think that's a very important thing. I really am. For me, it doesn't matter if it's a symphony or an oratorio. To me, there's a beginning and an end, and I need to know that journey through, from movement to movement, from aria, from recitative to aria to chorus. And I remember when I very first came and I rehearsed Messiah. It was actually before I was appointed, and I remember the players and indeed the chorus sort of looked at me and think, he's not allowing us to turn the page. Well, come on, this is a drama. It's not, you finish one aria, turn the page, set the scene, turn the page, set the scene. It's an entertainment. And you need to be testing the emotions of everybody in the audience, as well as the emotions of everybody on stage. And that's what I love what I do, and I hope, and I do feel that actually orchestra and chorus love what they're doing when we're performing.
Yeah, can I just ask one more question? Sorry, guys, to keep bumping in here. But speaking of, I have two questions, actually. I lied. First is, you mentioned Messiah. I just remembering Joélle, the first time I heard you was doing Messiah with New York Phil, and how blown away I was by that performance, and how happy I was to come here and see that you're pretty much a regular with H&H every year, which is to our great benefit. Harry, you conducted every year with us, and a lot of music directors don't conduct their orchestras and messiahs every year. They bring in someone else to do that. Why do you feel so passionately about this piece? What does it say to you? And why do you make sure that you do it every season with H&H? And will you do it again with us if we ask you?
Yeah, of course I would. I mean, I love, well, first and foremost, I love the work. I mean, I don't know how many performances I've conducted. I've done something like 150 with the 16. So, I mean, I must have done well over 250 performances of it. And it never tires for me. And I sort of go back to, I remember when Charlie McCarris was still alive, and somebody said to him, "Why don't you do things from memory?" And he said, "Well, I like to have the score because every time I'll find something different." And it could be and I know that my Redeemer liveth. We want to just change a dotted a 16th note to an eighth note and do what he printed or to he wrote, or we want to just experiment with a slightly faster tempo and link into things. So everything has to be kept alive. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that in Messiah, I think worldwide, particularly in every English-speaking country, has sort of it's had the feeling of tradition. Everybody should go to Messiah. Everybody does go to Messiah itself. It's one of the first things that sells out. But actually, why are they going there? They're going there because their parents used to, and or it's the thing to do. But actually now I feel that the number of times somebody in the audience will come up and say, "Wow, I remember coming to the Messiah 15, 16 years ago, and it used to last 3-4 hours. It seems to be gone in a flash." Well, I say it's still lasting about 3 hours, but actually we're producing a drama and an entertainment, and it's fresh. It's fresh every time. And it's got to be fresh when you got somebody like Joélle singing the soprano solos for you. I mean, it's brilliant. And as I say, it's keeping the drama going and enjoyment. It goes through every emotion. It's such a rare piece. Takes us through the whole of the Christian year, from Advent through to Passion, through to crucifixion and resurrection. So it's got every element, and it's handled at its best.
David, did you have a second question?
I did. I'm sorry to keep butting in here, but if you'll permit me, just one last one. It's actually for Aisslinn, well, maybe all three of you, all four of you. It's about HIP and period performance. I think a lot of people have the impression that historically informed performance practices and period performance is kind of an academic exercise, that we do it because it's kind of neat to go back and think about how the music was performed on instruments of that time. But actually, I think with H&H, it's a very different motivation. It's really about bringing the music alive with freshness and vitality as it was when it was brand new, when the ink was still wet on the page and all of that. And I guess I wonder, this is for all of you, how do you take, this is a layman's question I get, how do you take all this academic historical study and research and work that you do, and then forget all that and just make it flow in a concert? I'm trying to grapple with, does it really matter that we play on instruments we play on, that we adapt the performance practices that we do? Does it matter to the audience, and how does it matter to them?
Aisslinn, why don't we start with you? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, David. I can't answer about the audience because I don't know, but I really hope it does make a difference to them. And I suspect they would hear a quality of sound difference if you put us up against even an excellent modern orchestra playing the same repertoire. There would be differences that they could perceive. I hope they think it's worth it, because we sure do put a lot of energy into it. For myself, how I get away, because there is a lot of academic work in researching what these composers, even just things like notation, what did one note mean to Vivaldi compared to Bach, compared to Mozart, when they write their handwriting, even that can indicate to me different ways to interpret their music. So I do my academic work and my study trying to understand the historical context of the music, And then on the stage, I simply try to connect with the emotional content of the music, and it always just sweeps me away. So I forget all my books and my words and whatever else is going on and just go for it. I'm sure everybody else has a different perspective on it though.
Yeah, Joelle, what do you think?
Oh, you're muted.
My computer is ancient, and so it takes a while to respond. I think I probably have the least academic knowledge of anyone here about historically informed performance. But I think that if you do what's on the page, it kind of takes care of it. For singing, that's how I feel about it. And if you're not trying to gild the lily or, you know, sort of make it your own too much, that kind of for singing, for solo singing anyway, that I feel like that kind of just takes care of it. It sounds like what it's supposed to sound like, I think.
Harry, do you have anything to add?
Well, not really. I think you've both said it all, really. I mean, the thing is, I think with I think if you go back 20, 30 years when the period music movements were really getting underway, then there's a massive difference from those times to what is happening today, because I think you did get people experimenting with the instruments, trying to grapple with playing a baroque oboe and making some awful sounds. These days now we have players in the orchestra that have spent so much time studying and working and are now masters of their instruments, which is a big difference. So, you know, and of course we soak up as much academia as we can, but I totally agree with Aisslinn. Once you're on the stage, it is about performing. And, you know, there's a certain element where, you know, with the much bigger works like the Matthew Passion or Messiah or Haydn's Creation, that actually we're stripping the copies away. We're making it, you know, leaner, lighter, and much more vibrant. And the technical abilities of the musicians, you know, bring that all to life in an incredible way. And that's what makes it exciting. I think as regards singing, that is, it's a slightly different matter, but I mean, the same principles apply in the sense of how we shape a phrase, our attention to sometimes singing instrumentally, and similarly instrumentalists playing vocally sometimes, and, you know, so having a feeling of what that style is all about. And for me, it is amazing when you conduct a modern orchestra, or indeed modern singers who haven't done much earlier music, they know nothing about architecture of the phrase, and all of this music is based on a simple architecture. The phrase goes up and the phrase goes down. You add a crescendo as the phrase goes up, and a diminuendo as the phrase goes down, and you need to be just exemplifying that all the time. And you know, that's a very simplified ideal, but yeah, you guys have said it all anyway.
And we do have a comment from one of our listeners that about the nuts and bolts, about the actual physical instruments, that she feels that the historical instruments give a sweeter sound just by the way that they're structured, the way that they're played, the way that the bows are structured. So she thought that there was a sweeter sound for historically informed performance. And speaking of the chat, audience members, the chat is open. Feel free to put any and all comments, questions for any of our panelists, not only Harry. And then to start it off, we will grill Harry Christophers. He will defend his dissertation, and we'll have both Joelle and Aisslinn ask a question or two of Harry. And Aisslinn, I'll start with you if that's all right.
Sure. Harry, I was glad to hear earlier that you would consider coming back and working with us in the future. I'm going to hold you to that. If we can manage to work it out with our busy schedules, do you have any repertoire, well, either with H&H in the future or on your own personal journey? Is there any repertoire that you haven't gotten to yet in your career and are interested in getting into?
All the rest of Haydn. I mean, I've said it so often. It's well, it's you, Aisslinn, in particular, that's really introduced me to Haydn. I came to H&H, honestly, not knowing that much Haydn. I'd conducted 2 or 3 symphonies, all with modern orchestras. I'd done a few performances, Creation, the Seasons, but oh my goodness, I mean, he's been a total revelation to me, and I love our end of January project, year in, year out. Absolutely love it. And you know, we have to complete those Mozart concertos. That's how I say, when you direct those anyway, but you know, I love it.
That's wonderful to hear, Harry, because we do have a lot more, quite a few more symphonies to get through. with
Just
Haydn.
one or two.
But I'm glad to hear it's been so fun to explore Haydn more and more with you. I personally feel that he's one of the major composers that suffers the least from a lack of an HIP approach. That's just the way I feel, that everybody in my world before I started playing Baroque, everybody knew that Haydn was important because you were told that in school. But if you play the music, in my opinion, without understanding of the context historically, it can lose a lot of sparkle and especially humor. So it's been really fun for me at H&H to be working with Haydn and his humor and you. So thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Joelle, how about you?
Well, Harry, I've had the opportunity to do Bach, Handel, Mozart with you, but the creation at the end of the season is the first time that we will have done Haydn. And I just wondered how you came to the decision to make that your final official thing with H&H.
That's simple, Joelle, because I feel our recording of creation is sort of my proudest moment with H&H. We did it in English because that's what it was. It had been first performed by H&H in English all those years ago, and of course, it's in my opinion, it's just as good in English as it is in German. The libretto is incredibly flowery, incredibly beautiful, and I mean, having sort of my grassroots coming through the Renaissance and everything like that, the whole idea of word painting, right from Victoria and the likes of William Byrd, right through then to Handel and now to Haydn. Haydn sort of is the total master of word painting, and not only for the voice. The voice and instrumentally is equal. I mean, the instruments have actually probably even more word painting than the vocalists do. So it was a must. And the first thing I said to David is, I'm going to make you blush. One of my three favorite soloists, and that had to be Joelle, Rob, Murray, and Matthew Brook, because the things that single you out are just attention to the words. The words have a meaning. It's so many singers, it's just about the voice. And it can't be that. If you're a singer, it has to be about text, presenting that and coloring every vowel, every consonant, etc., and making the music and the text come alive off the page. And that's what we're going to do in next May. I can't wait for it. I mean, I just love the piece.
I have to say, I feel like because we first worked together in 2011 with the 16, and I feel like I learned seriously so much from you just about really singing the meaning, singing the words, not worrying so much about what the voice sounds like, because I was still young then. And it just, I feel like helped so much to inform the way that I think about music now. So thank you very much for that.
And you told me at the very end of those sessions when we recorded the work that was your first recording session.
Yeah.
And but you didn't show it at all. You looked like you're a past master. It was great fun.
Terrified.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question about that, Harry, because so many of us musicians have been doing recordings over the past year, whether it's for a virtual performance or just everybody kind of working through a backlog of pieces that they've wanted to record in the studio. And I have a newfound respect for actual recording artists whose primary communication with audiences is through a recording, because it's hard. It's so hard to maintain the scope of the journey, as you were talking about before. It's hard to maintain energy when everything is broken up into different takes, and there's a technical mistake or a noise that can break that concentration. So when you're recording a piece, how do you, are there any tools that you use to keep that energy going, not only on your side, but on the musician's side and in the recording booth as well?
Well, I mean, for H&H, I mean, of course, most of our recordings have been done live anyway, so that's the bonus of Handel and Haydn Society. I would never record anything live under normal circumstances, but with H&H, we have two performances. We sometimes have three, and we have Symphony Hall. So we got the most amazing recording studio there with glorious sound. and of course that side of it does put a lot of pressure on all the musicians. But on the other hand, there's a sort of electricity there that's actually, you know if you've played a bum note in the first performance, or sung a bum note on that one, you've got to get it right on the second performance. In terms of recording normally in studio, I mean, I'd love a critic actually to actually go around and just sit in on recording sessions by loads of different groups and just see the way they do things, because we all do things in a different way, and none of us are right. We all may think we're correct, but we do the things in the right way. But I like sort of to have a long take of a piece, and then I'll put it into sections. And even when I'm recording something like a Handel oratorio, I will do it in sequences, because I don't want to break up the momentum of that sequence. So, so in terms of budget, it usually goes up a bit further than it should do. But I think it is that balance of trying to maintain an amount of energy in all the performers. But of course, with all performers, there's that realization that, oh, well, if I do it wrongly that time, I've got a second chance. I can do it again. So that is quite a difficult balance to do. But to be really, I don't go over things for the sake of going over things. Put it that way. So if I know I've got what we want, and I trust my producer, as I always do. In the case of H&H, we have Raphael Mutard come over, who's just brilliant, and I trust Raph everything he says. So there is you have to trust your engineer and your producer, and I feel very, it's a difficult hill to climb for groups that are starting out, who haven't got a relationship with the technical team, and can feel quite daunted. Actually, I know many singers and instrumentalists that feel daunted by a producer saying, we've got to get bar 4 right, and you're panicking. If you're a violinist, you just freeze up. So it's necessary for there to be calm but constructive criticism all the time.
We have a question from an audience member for Harry, but I'd like to ask all three of you. And I'm going to start with Joélle. The question is, are you more energized before, during, or immediately after a performance?
Oh gosh. I'd say, probably before. It's just that anticipation. And of course, there are periods of being more energized depending on what one is singing or playing. And then afterward, I think is more relief. So definitely more energized beforehand.
Aisslinn, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I think it might be during the performance that I have the most energy. Before, I tend to just personally get my energy dips quite low, actually. I think it might be like winding up for the pitch of letting the emotions out on stage. But then afterwards, I'm an exhilarated mess, because I'm always really happy and can't stop thinking about the concert and can't sleep. So
Harry, what do you think?
Oh, well, it has to be during. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, before, but people will see me backstage at H&H. I'm sort of down 5 minutes early, pacing around a bit and trying to chat to people. But during performance, I'm absolutely on stage with everybody and trying to do my very best in actually just motivating everything and keeping it all energized. And then, quite frankly, afterwards, I'll be the first one to the pub for a beer. Let my hair down.
I can vouch for that. Yeah. And David, what about you? What's your emotional journey when you're there for a concert?
Truthfully, I am never not energized about H&H. I think before, during, and after are all, I'm all just totally on a high the complete time. Although during has to take the cake. I mean, just sitting there and watching the experience happen, listening to it, being a part of it, everything comes from that, I think. So I'd vote for during.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for that perspective. Harry, back to you. We have another question. How has H&H changed you as a conductor or an artistic director?
Oh, well, that's a really hard question to answer. I suppose in many ways, I mean, H&H is the sort of second group that I've ever sort of been an artistic director of, and the first being the 16, which I founded. So I don't sort of count that because that's ongoing, and that's been in effect my baby all the way through. So the being asked to be artistic director of H&H was, well, first and foremost, an incredible privilege, but actually it was also quite frightening, because here was I arriving, and it was all relatively new to me. Of course, I'd done 1 or 2 concerts prior, and I'd met many of the players and many of the singers. But I suppose it made me think a lot more about the music I was performing, because I felt in some ways, in many ways, I was on trial myself, because having the 16, as I say, is my own group. The 16 reflects my own loves in music. And in many ways with H&H, I often was doing some things, well, particularly Haydn, for instance, things that I hadn't got a natural feeling for, or had done many, many times before. So those ventures were great. I think diplomacy as well. I hope I've been pretty diplomatic over the years, but also the thing that Symphony Hall is a very big hall, and when it's full, you're performing to a phenomenal audience that's also in many ways an incredibly informed audience. I mean, that's often frightened me in a big way, because I'm chatting to patrons, I'm talking to you patrons, and you know much more about some of these composers than I do, and I do the politician then. I just sort of humor, and I feed off you guys. So yeah, gosh. Yeah, very different in many ways, because I was an artistic director of an organization that's been going for 200 years. I mean, that's principally the thing, really. That's quite some act to follow, really.
David, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to briefly get back to the question about HIP. We talked about the instruments and all of that, but we also talk about the musicians. It isn't just the gut strings and all of that matters. It's the musicians playing them, I think, that bring the personality and spirit to an H&H concert. And I wondered, Harry, and maybe Aisslinn can chime in here, what you look for. I've been in auditions with you. What are you looking for when you listen to a musician about joining H&H? What do you want in an H&H musician, be it orchestra or chorus?
Well, I think first and foremost, I mean, the great thing about our musicians, they know so much about the instruments they're playing, and so it's very clear when somebody is just picking up a period violin and playing it in their normal way. You can see straight away that that they're not, their bow strokes are not sort of informed or anything. I think as I mentioned before, what we have now is people playing who are technically brilliant and knows so much about their instrument. I mean, look at Todd, our principal horn player. I mean, he is a phenomenal modern horn player, but my goodness me, he's worked so hard at playing the natural horn, which is an incredibly difficult instrument to play. I mean, I'm longing for the time that we'll do a B minor mass with Todd, because that quoniarm solo is just incredibly hard, but to hear him play it, it's just lovely. Deborah playing the bassoon, the oboe. I mean, all these. You've got to remember that all these wind instruments you mentioned before about the color of them, they have an exceptional color that is so far different from what we hear today with modern instruments. We hear a trumpet playing, it's like a first oboe sound. It has a sort of honey sound to it. It's not a rasping sound that will travel right to the back of the hall. So the instruments are so very, very different, and also they're temperamental. These instruments are temperamental. I mean, I did feel for you all playing Beethoven 9 outside, because the strings, I don't know how many strings the violin section got through in that performance. It would have been many, because they're going to break and go haywire like nobody's business. So they are, they're technically difficult to play with. They are, when we have a sort of humid time, you have incredible humidity in Boston sometimes. Well, that affects the instruments incredibly. So, you're calling on a heck of a lot of artistry to make sure that, those things don't come across to an audience. Would you agree?
Well, Harry, what I'm trying to get at is the
Yes.
personality of the musicians, what you look for in what they bring to the performance. It isn't just about playing the notes. I remember I told a story about a major orchestra music director telling me once that he'd been invited, he was new at his job, he's invited to come to an orchestra committee meeting, and he says, I'll do it on the condition that you change the name of the committee from orchestra committee to performers committee. And I feel like you do that too, that you look for musicians who are going to perform and not just play, if you know what I mean. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yes. It's the same with singers. You have to have personality. If you're a performer of any description, it can be, in the period world, it can be classical world, pop world, etc. You have to be a performer, and you have to engage with the music you're performing. And okay, not everybody has to have a personality that is incredibly vibrant, etc. But there has to be a personality of some description there. And it could be, just simply depth of thought or an overt personality, and that has to come across the music. And I think that's what I look for in all the musicians. And added to that, of course, with the instrumentalists, this incredible knowledge about their instruments, and in particular, just the sheer love of playing the music we play. And I think that's what comes across with H&H, that, as soon as we're playing, it doesn't have to be the most famous pieces of Vivaldi or Bach. It could be pieces by Muffat or whoever, some relatively unknown stuff by Purcell or something. But you do get the feeling that everybody is really connecting with it, and bringing their own personalities to it. And I remember when we did Fairy Queen at Tanglewood, Purcell's Fairy Queen, and I think it was Priscilla who was playing the recorder in that, and and I just gave a few ideas, and she ran with them, and I thought, yeah, that's what I want in somebody. It's not about me. Actually, we're getting onto quite a subject here, David, because I think a lot is happening in music today where people seem to have to be told everything they have to do, and that's not what I want. I want them to come with their own ideas and personality, and have imagery going through their mind. Doesn't matter what we're playing. But if we're playing a minuet and trio, I want the whole orchestra to be coming up with imagery, thoughts behind, not necessarily the same thought, but just a thought. A man with two left feet trying to dance with an incredible dancer, or just imagery the whole time. So I think it comes right back to personality. I want those personalities to come alive on stage. And we've done that in one or two very simple ways. When we just have orchestral concerts, just making the orchestra stand, they're out of the comfort of their seat. They're suddenly having to perform and engage with their instruments. And that's it had an instant effect. Just simple things like that.
Aisslinn, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Harry. It's so interesting to hear. I've worked with you in these auditions and through the years, and we do discuss a lot, who we would like to choose, but I didn't know everything that was going on in your thought process, and I completely agree. And I will just say for myself, when I'm listening to an audition, I'm listening for mastery of instrument or voice, and also an attitude that conveys a collaborative spirit and a humility, because even though they've mastered their instrument, be it a voice or a violin, that they're humble enough to know that they can still learn something from all of us, because we're going to be a team. And then I would also say, I completely agree about personality. I also like to have some bravery in there on stage, because you mentioned how difficult these instruments are to wrangle. You know, the fact is I go out on stage with my violin, if it's extremely humid, my strings might explode. And there is a certain bravery in doing it anyway. And that is something that I think when we collectively share that feeling, that's where I think our edgy, exciting, really thrilling energy can come from. It might be hard, it might be impossible to play the natural horn, but Todd's going to do it anyway. That makes for really fun concerts.
And I'd like to add to that both the singers and the instrumentalists on stage perform historically informed music, but they also perform modern music. And Aisslinn, I'm not sure about the numbers on this, but I know that many of the members of the orchestra not only are playing the instruments that we see in H&H concerts, but they're also playing a different modern instrument. How many of the players only specialize in early music?
It's probably just me. I don't get out much. No, it's everybody is, and myself, I do play a little bit of modern violin. It's not that I don't like to, it's that I don't have enough hours in the day, but it's probably 90% of us play quite a lot of modern instruments. And that takes a lot of skill and flexibility to go back and forth between the two worlds too. I myself used to do a lot of modern violin playing and Baroque playing, and it was really switching. There's a switch that goes on there. I found it very challenging, and now I've just run out of time, but that's a really good point, because some of the wind instruments are not even close to each other. Like, it's just a whole other, they may have the sound production be the same, but the entire mechanism is different. The French horn being one of them. You know, you take all the valves away. Todd plays basically a garden hose with a funnel on the end, and he could do that. I've heard him do that. It's amazing, but it's very different than his modern horn. So yeah, it's a fun challenge, I think, for people.
And Joélle, how about you? For someone that can't physically change an instrument, how do you switch between modern and early music performance?
I think, well, you have to be careful about how you schedule your performances so that you're not weighting the voice too differently, you know, with back-to-back things. I think, you know, we all have our basic technique, and then we have a palette that is within that. And so I think just like singing with your real voice, but just doing like the things we were talking about, historically performed, informed practice, like having just that flexibility without trying to sing with an entirely different voice, not like literally switching your instrument out, but just doing what you do in whatever style is required.
There's a really great question from an audience member, and it helps us pivot a little bit to talking about the season that's upcoming. And so this person has really only come to know H&H and Harry during a lockdown from the virtual season. So she says, what advice can you give me and others who will be experiencing your music in person for the first time this season? What should we listen for, and how might we best enjoy your performances? Harry, what do you think for a H&H newbie?
That's fantastic. That's wonderful news. I mean, it just shows how important things are on the via the website and everything online. And I think that's one thing that's come about through this awful 18 months of the COVID pandemic, is just how groups like H&H have reached people all over the world, but not only people all over the world, but probably people in Boston who haven't been able to get to a concert for some reason or another. And that's absolutely wonderful. I mean, for person who's just written in, to actually now come and experience us live in Symphony Hall or Jordan Hall or wherever, you're in. I mean, all I can say is you're in for a treat, because there's one thing seeing people on a screen, there's another thing, witnessing it and experiencing the feeling of the audience around us. And what the most beautiful thing we have in Boston is this audience that just is so behind H&H and is so with everything that we do, and it's a very special feeling. You don't get that in many places in the world, I can assure you. But it's so I think you're just absolutely in for a treat, and to just be able to almost touch the performers, and you can come and chat to us afterwards and things like that. You might find us in a local bar to come along and have a chat. And Aisslinn and I sound CDs, so come and chat then as well.
I would love to say that. Thanks, Harry. I'd like to just say welcome to all of our newbies, as you said. And I want to encourage people who've never come to see us to know that there's no right or wrong way to listen to our music. Every way that you experience it is the right way. And just be open and see what you think. I think sometimes because our hall looks pretty fancy, it does, and sometimes we make ourselves look a little bit fancy on stage, that sometimes we can seem a little bit intimidating, but we're just a bunch of goofballs trying to have a really good time, and you'll see us laughing and smiling and doing all those things, and we would love to be doing it with you. So I can't wait. I'll be looking out there, looking for our new friends.
I will jump in to add that there is one right way to listen to the music of the Handel and Haydn Society this season, and that is wearing a mask and coming with your vaccination proof or your negative test results. But Joelle, what do you recommend for a person who's never been there before?
I think just be ready to feel some excitement. And I say that honestly, like not in a corny way, but it's just, I mean, I get to be on stage and experience the sound coming from the orchestra and the chorus in that way and feel Harry's energy, but also sitting out in the audience watching rehearsals and stuff. It's just so exciting because you can tell how much everyone really loves being there. Yes, it's a job, but it's like we're so lucky that we get to do these jobs where we have fun like 99% of the time, right? And I think that really jumps off the stage and it's tangible for the audience.
Yeah, and there's really something special about the physical experience of hearing sound in a live space, especially something that has the acoustic advantages of Symphony Hall. So for people who are really enjoying what they're experiencing on their computer screen, coming into the hall, you're sharing that emotional experience, but you're feeling something different with your body, and that first sound of the orchestra just kind of electrifying the air, and that's just going to affect you physically, and that's a really magical experience, and I'm looking forward to getting back to that as well. So there are just some bullet points about the program. Many of our listeners know exactly what's coming up. As we said, we're going to see Joelle in April and May, and Aisslinn is starting off the whole season with the Four Seasons by Vivaldi. Aisslinn, tell us what's exciting about that. What should we be listening for?
There's nothing to me about the Four Seasons that is not exciting. So I'm rather partial to these pieces, and so maybe not their best advocate because I get so excited when I think about them that I just want to start playing them. So I'll keep myself in my seat right now and say, I guess what everybody should listen for is how Vivaldi so cleverly depicts the passing of the seasons. And I think people who get to hear this we've performed these before at H&H. It's been years, and I think there's going to be an extra electricity and possibly poignancy from the fact that we've had to wait so long to do these. These were scheduled to have taken place during the shutdown. We were going to play the Four Seasons then, and we've had to wait all this time. So there's a lot of pent-up energy that needs to be expelled, and I'm going to try to figure out how I can do that on my violin without breaking any strings. But if I do break a string, I'll have extras. So we'll see you there.
And Harry, do you remember what the first piece that you programmed on this season was?
Oh, on this season, but apart from the side, it was Creation, because that's the piece I knew I would always want to end with. And then also, but as mentioned earlier, continuing the Haydn series, so we've got the drum roll symphony now, and Teresa Mass. Neither titles by Haydn, by the way. They were nicknames later. So at that, I'm really delighted to be continuing those. It's going to be very special, and it is. It's a very long time. It's now. I was last with you all at the end of January 2020. So I won't see you now until the end of November this year. It's a long, long time. So I just can't wait. Can't wait to be back with everybody. I miss everybody terribly, and it's just going to be very exciting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to being together in person again too. So one of the things that I have always found is a really interesting duality about the Handel and Haydn Society is that yes, we perform early music, but we're also regularly performing premieres that the H&H has never performed with each other together. And one of these that's on the program is just spectacular. This is the Third Symphony by Louise Farrenc. And I'm so excited to hear this symphony. She was a phenomenal person who became a full professor at the Paris Conservatory, making equal pay with her male colleagues in 1840. So just like a real talent that we don't hear on the stages very often. How did it come about that we're premiere an H&H premiere of this symphony this season?
Yeah, David, you want to?
Well, I'll just say that we had the opportunity to invite Lawrence Eckleby, the terrific French conductor, to come work with us for a week. And this is a piece that she feels strongly about and wanted to do and we hadn't done before. And you're right, Emily, it's a really terrific piece. Very kind of Mendelssohn-y, I guess, Schumann-y kind of, and it's being done around the country. Philadelphia is doing it this year, and we're introducing it to our audience. It's kind of amazing. It's never been done before because it's really so great. So it's really because of Lawrence Eckleby's vision that we're doing it.
It's
Right.
an incredible lady, as you mentioned, Emily, but she was also a phenomenal concert pianist and had praise for her playing and compositions by Robert Schumann. So yeah, very well known in her day. So this is brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. And I see that I see, David, that the Bach Christmas concerts are already sold out.
Darn. Well, good news, we've added a third. We're going to do one of the reasons they're sold out is that we couldn't do them at Jordan Hall because of COVID restrictions. So we're doing them in smaller venues, churches, which I think actually will be a terrific experience for the audience. So we are in the process of announcing a Saturday evening performance at First Church in Cambridge, and that'll be on the website soon if it isn't already. But yeah, it's a great program with Raphael Pichon, another terrific French conductor, coming in to lead us.
Great. Well, there's some inside information there for our listeners. And Harry and Aisslinn, you'll be at the Carnegie Hall debut. Is that correct? Or just Aisslinn will be there?
I think it's actually chorus.
Well, it's just the chorus.
But
right.
I will be there.
I think you'll be there, Emily.
You'll be there. But I'll be there cheering you guys on, as I always like to do. I can't wait for that.
Great. And yeah, and we usually have a pretty good contingent of H&H fans and audience members that make the trip down to New York for that. So we look forward to seeing you there. That's another beautiful venue, not as dear to our hearts as Symphony Hall, but equally spectacular. Looking forward to that. There's a question from an audience member, Harry. What is left for you to do in Boston? Are there any sort of tourist activities that you've never gotten the chance to do while you've been coming for the last 13 years?
Oh, wow. Several things, because you keep me all so busy when I'm here. No, I've not seen the glass, those wonderful glass museum at Harvard yet. So that's got to be done, hasn't it? And likewise, and also I've never been out to Salem. So I want to get out there. How far is that away from Boston?
It's a good hour. Yeah, it's up where David is.
Yeah. Right.
But yes,
and there is a question, speaking of keeping you busy while you're in Boston, there is a question about the inescapably tight time that we always have for rehearsals. So for each of you, just like very quickly, what are the things that you wish we could do if we had unlimited time and resources? And I'm going to start with Joélle.
I think that having a sort of tighter time frame makes things a little more exciting and maybe makes those performances a little more I don't know what I want to say, also exciting. You might not know exactly what's going to happen, but I think the orchestra is always so well prepared, and the chorus, and so it never feels dangerous or like it could have a negative impact. It just makes it feel like it's alive and living and breathing. I think sometimes if you have a rehearsal period that's too long, you sort of get past your prime by the time that the performances come, and it feels a little bit old hat, or it has that potential.
Yeah. Aisslinn, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it is always time. The time always needs to be managed, because time is money for everybody and for every organization. And one thing I've always appreciated about Harry is that he uses the time with the choir and orchestra very efficiently. And so I like to try to do that when I'm organizing schedules for rehearsals to make sure that we feel prepared and confident, but not overly comfortable with the material, because I think that, as Joélle said about staying exciting, that still needing to really pay attention with all of your senses, not feeling overly confident is one way that a performance can be really spectacular. But I'd be curious to hear what Harry thinks.
I'm a little bit OCD about sort of rehearsals, so I plan the rehearsals in a way that I know I've got enough time to do things, and it is a case of time management. And I think, you know, having been a professional singer all those many years ago, I worked with a lot of people who use the rehearsals very well, but also I've worked with many more people that actually ran out of time in rehearsal, or you got to the performance and you was completely voiceless and couldn't sing. So it's knowing what you can leave to the excitement of the actual concert, and what you actually need to cover. And I think I hope I've always had enough rehearsal time, and to actually get things how I want. And I agree totally with Joélle. I really like a tight rehearsal period, so that we can go into the concert with a sense of excitement and risk. You mentioned that earlier, Aisslinn. I think it's so important to be able to risk something on stage, and that's, you know, over the years, that's the stage I think we've got to with H&H. I love it now, the feeling that I can go onto that concert platform and actually go with the flow of the music, and if something inspires me extra, then let's do it. And everybody does follow me, thank goodness. Result.
And we are sort of coming to the end of our time together today. I have one more question for each of the four of you, and I'm going to start with David. Is there one non-musical thing that you're looking forward to over the coming season?
Just one. Well, we just bought a little 13-foot whaler, and learning how to operate it, going and having some fun with it. I'm looking forward to this fall and next year. So I guess that'd be my answer.
All right, Joélle, how about you?
Well, my daughter's now in kindergarten, and so I have decided to apply to be a substitute teacher so I can spend some more time with her. But just like feeling like sort of participating in the community in that way, I'm looking forward to.
Great. Aisslinn, what about you?
Yeah, well, I've got some family up in Canada that have been away from since before the pandemic actually started. So I'm really looking forward to finding practical ways to reconnect in person with them. It'll be a great few days.
Wonderful. And Harry, we'll give you the last word.
Well, I've got two things actually. The first is to do with football, soccer you call it. My team, Arsenal, are doing really badly, almost at the bottom of the Premiership. So I want to see them rise up. But then the other thing I'm really looking forward to, I'm just hoping that I'm going to be able to bring out over the whole family at some stage this year, because I've got 4 children, of course, who've all got their partners, and only 1 or 2 have ever come to Boston. So I'm really looking forward to them, you know, witnessing what H&H is all about.
Yeah, well, it does feel like one big family, so we'll welcome them over as if they were our own. So thank you very much, Joélle, Harry, Aisslinn, David. Thank you for being wonderful panelists. Thank you to the audience. We had some really brilliant questions, and it was so informative to get everybody's perspective on it. If you live in Boston or Somerville, don't forget to vote today if you haven't already. And please join us for the upcoming season. You can subscribe on the website, handleandhaydn.org, or you can call our box office. That's at 617-266-3605. And of course, you can watch our virtual performances on the Watch and Listen page on the website. You can head over to handleandhaydn.org for links to a trove of streaming performances. Thank you again. I'm Emily Marvosh. I look forward to seeing you all in person this season. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.